One of the challenges that I've seen recently is the idea of moving from a larger enterprise system to Business Central that is more targeted at that SMB market. There are absolutely, I'll say most functionalities are in place in Business Central to meet a varying slew of businesses across a lot of different industries. That's absolutely the selling point of, hey, we have this fantastic ERP system that can be tweaked in small areas as needed to meet a lot of different verticals. However, when you are very used to, as a business, that enterprise level ERP system, that can be a challenging transition. Hey, we have always done things this certain way. We want it exactly this way. And while that might be configurable in enterprise level system, that's something that is less flexible in Business Central. Maybe it's something that we have to extend for if we're going to end up going that route. One thing that we do to mitigate that as early as possible is try to understand where those gaps lie. And that is not an easy process. It's something that there will be things that come up during the project that we go, hey, this is something that we will have to extend if you want to do it exactly the same way as you were doing it with your old system. That's going to be an expectation setting exercise with both the stakeholders of the project as well as the project users, saying that not everything will be exactly the same if we choose to adopt a more out-of-box approach to Business Central. If we want to minimize that customization risk, if we want to adapt some of the business processes to what we can do in Business Central, not every process will be exactly the same. So having the ability for the business to be flexible around that is really key, and just setting that expectation very early. Change management is absolutely, I would say, the hardest part of an ERP implementation. There are varying levels of change management from, hey, we're going from Nav to Business Central, and it's pretty straightforward. A lot of the concepts and really just the processes are a straight carryover. And then you've got, hey, maybe we're going from full Excel to Business Central. And in some ways, that's also an easy transition because we don't have as strict of a process now, and we're going into a system that does have some certain guide rails to help guide your process. But change management, it's a very difficult thing to properly plan for, to properly orchestrate, especially with the number of people that you may have to do that with throughout the business, right? The more users that we have, the harder of a training exercise it is, the harder of a lift it is. It's absolutely something that during diagnostics, we need to understand, what is the user population like? Some folks will pick it up right away. I genuinely believe that Business Central is a very user-friendly, the UI is great. Like, this can be picked up quickly for folks with good computer experience and computer literacy, but some users are very resistant to change. Hey, maybe they've been using the same system for 30 years. I've seen folks that they can hit buttons and they know what inputs to make before the system will catch up. They are going to be usually harder to train in Business Central just because they have their very ingrained processes in the existing systems. So it's absolutely a consideration during that planning phase. Throughout the project, it needs to be something where, again, we have this methodology where we try to get users as involved as early as possible. We want to get processes flowing in the new system in Business Central, get users in there and working through things. We want to take this train the trainer approach where we have some of the power users sit in right as early as week 2, that's always the goal, and then have kind of them start to run some of the testing with the other users by the end of the project. That really helps with the training, having somebody on the ground that's actually a business user that other users trust, helping out with that training. So it's one of the hardest things in the project. It's a little bit different for every single customer. We just need to make sure that we plan a strategy for it early on. The selection and involvement of the user base in the project as a whole is one of those key things that happens well before day one. Typically, it ends up being a selection that is driven by the customer's leadership, as they know very well, hey, these are our power users, these are the people that have been here a long time that know the process really well. And honestly, we do take a lot of their time and availability. So it's important to know that up front, to make sure that They are not somebody where, hey, if they have a 50%, 60, 70% of involvement in the project, that the business is going to fall apart. This is something to plan for ahead of time before we even get started. When we get down to bringing in more and more of the business users, to your point, right, we can't just have every single person that's running the business come and sit in one training. We have a few strategies for this. We oftentimes will kind of have multiple training sessions where we still have that key person, that trainer that we've trained up, that they will be involved in 2 to 3 sessions. We'll have different subsets of users come in through those times. Maybe that ends up being some training where it's less of a formalized, hey, we're gonna sit down for 2-3 hours here, but hey, whenever you have a free moment, whenever you are not actively receiving in the warehouse, have that trainer sit down and go through some of the new system with those users. Again, a lot of different approaches to this, but we absolutely understand that the business needs to stay running. People have day jobs. This is not their full-time job. It is absolutely our full-time job, but we need to work around those limitations. One of the things that we talked about earlier was the goals of the project. And I have seen a lot of different reasons, a lot of very valid different reasons and goals for a lift and shift and what I would consider more of a traditional kind of best approach to taking a standard implementation where we actually go through and we address the business practices, why we're doing things, and not just kind of doing that rapid or lift and shift approach. Most of the time, people opt for a lift and shift approach when there is a certain constraint in place. Like maybe that's a timeline, maybe it's a budget, maybe it's truly we are just trying to get off the system because it's old and everything else is perfect. There's a variety of reasons why that might be done. And really one of the things that I feel sets us apart as partners is that we're not only going to say we have to do it this way, we need to do it our standard process of going through every single business process and making adjustments to them to kind of fit best practices. We will absolutely give you multiple options of, hey, this is what it would be like if we did a lift and shift. We'll go through the pros and cons of each if that is what you're looking for. This is something that, again, there's a time and place for different types of implementation strategies. I'll be honest, I think that a lot of companies don't actually need a ERP that is fully tailored to their vertical. Most of the processes, the best practices in a lot of the financial areas especially, really should be pretty similar between a lot of different businesses. Making a generalized statement there, of course, but I think a lot of companies kind of psych themselves out saying, hey, I really need this specific ERP because it is really good at food and bev, or it's really good at construction. And absolutely, there are complexities in, actually those 2 that I mentioned have some specific complexities that really need to be designed against. But a lot of the retail distribution, some of these ERPs that kind of claim to be very specific for them are not always following some of the best practices. So, we use Business Central. We work with a lot of different verticals. Absolutely, we specialize kind of in that retail, distribution, some of the manufacturing, in those areas. But at the end of the day, those areas that we tailor for specific industries, we want to make sure that we are modifying the system for a good reason, right? This is because there is a secret sauce in the business that cannot be done with the out-of-box product. There is a complexity that cannot be met with the out-of-box product. Otherwise, we want to try and keep it as out-of-box as possible and follow a best practice business process as much as possible. These are obviously system projects and technical projects, but at the end of the day, you'll hear us say that these are people projects first and foremost, and really that people part of it is the business, right? We need to make sure that we are considering the business processes, the business goals, growth. All of these aspects drive the project more than the technical. They need to lead the technical. The technical is driven by needs of the business, right? It's not something that we just say, hey, we're going to go and develop so-and-so, and then you're going to use it, right? It's, hey, we need to use it this way, so we're going to develop it this way if needed. That is really just a key tenet to how we approach these implementations.